I'm really, really pleased to be introducing our next speaker now, Kris Putnam-Walkerly, who has produced a book, actually produced two books, but a book of particular interest, which is called Delusional Altruism. It's a very good read that everyone should look at in philanthropy. So, Kris, I'm very pleased you've joined us here with Talking Philanthropy today. And we're very interested in what you've got to say, having worked with so many philanthropists around the world.
Yes, thank you so much, Ben, for having me. I am a global philanthropy advisor, and my most recent book, Delusional Altruism, is one that I wrote after advising funders and donors around the world for over 20 years and recognizing that they are genuine in their altruism. They want to make a difference, change the world, but are often getting in their own way and preventing themselves from achieving the impact that they're seeking. And they often don't realize this is happening. So that's the delusion. It's not that they're crazy. It's that they're clinging on to some misguided beliefs and practices that are holding them back. And one of those practices is a scarcity mindset, which really surprises people because we equate wealth with abundance. But I think the single biggest problem holding funders back and donors is having a scarcity mindset and not investing sufficiently, both in themselves and their own learning, in the infrastructure of philanthropy, and certainly in the nonprofit and social organizations that they're seeking to support.
I was really fascinated to read all about that, and also your recommendations about how you might change your behavior and almost the over-engineering that's happened in some giving in the past. And now, of course, I would imagine the pandemic has changed a lot of that behavior. And I'd be very interested to know, because Talking Philanthropy is very much looking at the impact of the pandemic, how you think that's impacted philanthropists and how they operate.
Yeah, I think one change we've seen worldwide certainly has been a willingness of donors and philanthropists to give in different ways, certainly rapidly increasing their speed, getting money out the door faster, removing restrictions, offering general operating support, really trusting social sector organizations to do the work they need to do and giving them the resources quickly to do that, which has been great. I think that's an example of an abundance mindset. Because too often that scarcity mindset has held donations back and, restricting the amount of money on overhead and really not providing the capacity, the infrastructure that organizations need to succeed. So that's been a great finding. Not every donor certainly has done that, but a lot of them have. One of my concerns really as we are heading into the recovery in many parts of the world is that a lot of those best practices that many philanthropists have been embracing in the past year will retract. And we're actually beginning to see some signs of that, where donors are saying, well, we gave quickly during a pandemic, we had to, but now that things are getting back to normal, quote unquote, which they still aren't in many parts of the world, we're going to go back to our old ways of, taking 6 months to make a funding decision. I think that's a problem.
We've certainly got a lot of examples of really good philanthropy, Talking Philanthropy around the world, and particularly in Asia, which is really actually inspiring. And the philanthropists actually talking about why they did that and why they reacted so quickly. And I think that's quite remarkable to see that evidence. We've also heard from Cambridge University actually about how important unrestricted money is to help drive philanthropy, particularly in the global south and many developing countries. And I just wonder if you have any further thoughts, because that kind of fits with this idea of philanthropists not always looking at ticking every box and looking at every impact assessment, but perhaps being a bit more big idea and actually thinking about resourcing things that perhaps are operational or unrestricted resource. And I just wondered if you have any thoughts specifically around Asia about how important that might be.
Yeah, a couple thoughts. One is, I think this pandemic has showed us that the nonprofit, non-governmental organizations, the philanthropists, the businesses that had invested in their own systems, infrastructure, coaching, financial management, innovation, talent acquisition and development, those are the organizations I think that are weathering the storm and innovating and thriving and increasing their effectiveness and will be most successful coming out of the pandemic. And so to me, that really speaks to the value of investing in that infrastructure. And I think in Asia, one of the greatest challenges for philanthropy and the greatest opportunities is there is a lack of philanthropic infrastructure. There's a lack of, sort of in the legal system, financial systems, in terms of transparency, best practices, infrastructure organizations that are convening funders and donors, lack of research. And so I think, and in order to grow philanthropy, I think you need to invest in that infrastructure development so that it can be the most effective. One example I see of an organization doing that well is the Narada Foundation in China. And their Secretary General, Yani Peng, has been instrumental both putting money and also her leadership around building philanthropic infrastructure in China. And I think that kind of investment really pays off in the long run because it gives more donors the confidence in supporting organizations, being able to identify organizations to support, those organizations having the transparency and accountability that they need to demonstrate the results that they're trying to achieve.
We're very interested to see the number of billionaires in Asia. And as you well know, there's many, I think, in Asia now, if not more, than there are in Europe, and more perhaps even in the US. And therefore, there's huge potential for philanthropy for the future. And I'm just being interested what you think the potential is from your perspective, having worked with philanthropists across the world, but particularly in Asia, and the sorts of trends you're seeing, and how optimistic or pessimistic you might be for the future.
I am quite optimistic. I mean, I think if you look at the world's billionaires, China has the most, over 1,000, followed by the US, followed by India. And wealth is growing. And so as there's more wealth, there's more opportunity for philanthropic investment. But as I write about in the book, it's not just how much you give, it's how you give. And I think some things are going to be really critical. One is donors having clarity of their strategy. What are they trying to accomplish? Where are they? And what's the best way for them in their own situation, in their own cultures and countries to shift from where they are today to where they want to be? What kind of impact are they trying to achieve? And importantly, how are they collectively achieving that? Not just themselves as a funder, as a donor, as a billionaire, but in collaboration with government, especially in support of the SDGs and with other funders and other infrastructure organizations. I think also in terms of how you give, as you referenced before, the importance of giving unrestricted support and really allowing nonprofits and non-governmental organizations to innovate, and really kind of funding that critical risk-taking research and development arm that philanthropy can be, using that capital to try new ideas, to test innovations and take risks, and really kind of ignite, new thinking, new ways of doing work that, perhaps then government can take on and really implement it at a greater scale. So I think it's not just how much you give, but also how you give that's critical.
That's so helpful and so exciting. And it also pinpoints this whole issue that we're really focusing on today at Talking Philanthropy, which is around the role of government and how it can work with philanthropists. So I think that's a really helpful contribution. Can I thank you so much for joining us with Talking Philanthropy today and bringing your expertise. And I look forward to perhaps a book on Asian philanthropy in the future. You never know. Maybe it's in the making. But thank you, Kris, for your time today. And thank you for joining us on today's discussions.
Thank you so much, Ben.